Digi Druada, Dungase, Tablam, that Derek Jeg, Yamlan Jade, and the Digor Gares in the Kazan, Digor Shushe, Namadu Nagajet, and dining Bakasan Shue, Telea, and Chu, Nantugina, Rango Munio, Tuba, Nangore, Kudan, Kiangalama, Rango, Nangore, Nawana Shinjik, and Donna Neva Mares, Jasandi, Denichiland, Dongba said, Denish Legoria. And the other answer that Kazan Nichiki and the Pandit City, Chechimada, Tabata, Tamjikimba, Toyaki, Shizo, the Karesinada, Shuyam or Chesamo, Yamne or Dilamik Mangazuya, and Madusine, Lapsi Nangores, just I think on the in Tabana Yang to get Jik by the Yamne or Essaging, or the Chesamon Yamne Ores. That in a Yamne choose someone and the Mambo Yubin and the Kazan of the Jixuber, Karasena, Luma used to nature to be Chudum Songores, Chisati, Soyati, and Sobaina, Seteline, and the Ranzuki, Luma used to nature, Mongo Chedan, and Mayowa, Rajan Nigala, and the Pembada, and the Yawachimaina, Tiensang, Bolada Mugo, Toptuya, and the Tabata, Tamjikin Boko Toyaki, and the Shizachigo, Essage.
Good morning. Yesterday we started to look at our text, which summarizes the method that we need to engage in order to achieve our longed-for happiness and to eradicate all forms of suffering in their entirety. So of the various topics we explicitly looked at yesterday, one was I introduced how every object of thought, every phenomenon that appears to us, it appears as if it exists truly. But despite appearing in this way, it is not how it exists. All phenomena are empty of existing in the way that they appear. And the consciousness that realizes this is a consciousness in accordance with reality. It's a wisdom. And this is the wisdom realizing emptiness, realizing that phenomena are empty of existing in the way that they appear. Moreover, yesterday, we spoke about that the complete and unmistaken method that one needs to engage in order to achieve happiness, or as we had in the second verse, is we must cultivate the topics of the profound Dharma. And if, to the extent that we do so, we will experience happiness in this life and be creating the causes for happiness in our future lives. In particular, we'll be creating the causes to attain good rebirths and rapidly spiritually progress towards our goals, such as liberation and enlightenment. And then we also yesterday looked at the first spiritual instruction from Gendün Gyatso, which is that of ethics, ethical restraint, restraining the mind from coming under the influence of afflictions and thereby restraining our physical behavior and our verbal behavior. And to the extent that we can restrain our mind in this way, we will experience benefits in this life as well as in our future lives, because through these causes, we'll be creating the primary cause that is required for good rebirths, life after life. And that enables us to be able to continue our spiritual development, striving towards our attainment of liberation and enlightenment. So that in brief is what we looked at yesterday.
And the Manzu Mik to Yore and the Sharon Yubana Mig me lad was it? Didn't caress a big chicken gruada. Chizadine Zada, Sharon Yubana Mig me said the Carsone. Chida Mikune Zawaki Meva Relagomare. Mig me said the Manzu Miki, Gudan Kin, Shenchila, Matioba, Korango in the drip to be Michiomare, yes. Dina Shen no good and Amchoda Chaza. 자산 규단 긴 현실을 뛰는 주거마다 현실을 맞대봐 강라마 한국 문의 줍대가 요 미티요 말에 랑원의 줍대비 누구예요 말에서 디스고래.
In the Heart Sutra that we've just recited, there are many things that are negated. For example, it says explicitly, there is no eye, there is no ear, there is no tongue, there is no nose, and so forth. And this, when read, sounds a little strange. How can one say there's no eye? I'm reading this. So here one needs to understand the meaning. It's not saying that the eye doesn't exist at all. It's saying the eye doesn't exist. So the eye, as in the physical eye, it doesn't exist in the way that appears to consciousness. It is not truly or inherently existent. So it does not exist in that way. The way it does exist, though, is dependent on causes. So again, the eye, like these other phenomena that are negated explicitly in the Heart Sutra, does not exist independently, which is how it appears, but it exists dependently on, for example, causes.
지난주에서 가상아도 동반이 세제 당보거나 동니세 인세 동반이 세도 지난 가라에마도 랑문이 마주바들 동반이 라기레스 지난디나제 다데다도 셰라니 바다 믹메세데 믹세디 가라에마도 랑문이 주비기 믹시요 말에 세도다 동반이 시시거르다.
In the first line we looked at yesterday, from the power of the state of emptiness, the natural expanse, there I introduced the topic of emptiness. So we take that understanding and we apply it to all these negations in the Heart Sutra, such as no eye. And then we can understand it, that it's not saying that the eye does not exist at all, but that it is empty of existing independently in the way that it appears.
세디시니가기 펜비기 대펜디기 용약의 시 아니 최사만의 냠을 제거래에서도 가사지 송으로 냠을 제거했어. 단 냠을 제발이야 튕겨라지 망보 창고래 땡당 안뒤다 시행이 창고에서 다된 말 디승고래다. 이런 게 땡 가라가리 간치를 땡지를 냠을 전에 야가요라 간치 제거래서디 다된 말 주고래.
We'll continue looking at the text now, and it continues the theme of how to attain happiness. We saw yesterday in the first line of the second verse, the basis for spiritual and temporal well-being in this and future lives is the Lama's teachings of the profound Dharma. So this is what we're going to continue to look at yesterday. And because yesterday I introduced how generally we look for happiness and to overcome problems in the outer material world. But the true source of happiness is to be found within. So this is what we're going to continue to look at now.
That's it. Chenya Barakashin Jiglavi, Dindaju Milu Tobdutir, Demeke Jevi Miyavar, that's it, Chula Bena Lex.
The third verse, extraordinary, difficult to gain, and so easily lost. This basis, a precious human life, has now been obtained. Do not be distracted by activities of no value. Rather, right now, strive perfectly and single-pointedly in the Dharma.
Adonala Karasumurasene, Chenya Barakashin Sedu, La Chenya Barakawa said, and Anzuki Milu Tovia de Be Kalehabure Ejere, Janadi Kalehabures, and Sharagi Kalehabures more.
Looking at the word difficult or extraordinary difficult, what is it that is so extraordinarily difficult to gain? It is this human body that we have all achieved.
Onadi Kalekare, that you know to do some davena, that Zemblinalia, Ane Chike, Mida, and Dundro, Manzu, Miki Toy, Tonjus, Cupicate, Dundro, the Mida Zivina, the Midbe, Nunu Shucharvada, Jaja. Jane and Jipa Jajan Chisas Mother Meva Charura. The milling million of the deep Bendigo, Budromatic Rama, some sort. Dinashida Buddha Rikta Maran Chunali Bajik, Semjanta Mara, Denisibena, Midbe, Nuro Shuchala. Jesa, the Garrison Milu de Topkawa in Bugim Zengi, Kawa in Bugim Zengida, or Milu New Charwa.
Come to understand this point. One reflects how, if we take the mass of living beings on our world, on our planet, comparing humans and animals, certainly a fraction of a percent would be human beings. The rest would be other life forms, other animals. I have a suspicion that if one were somehow to count all the ants in the greater Bendigo area, there would be more than the 7 billion humans. And this is excluding other life forms, such as all the fish and plankton and so forth to be found in the ocean. The number of beings who have taken rebirth in an animal form is immense. The number of human beings is minuscule.
And Elia, on Drum Geshe Yema, Umbrella Lama Chigit Ma Chus on the Kabla, that Deneki Miluset Be, Mazotoko Ares, Minunu Res, Dalekale Res, and Sonisrawa. That Dinan Machu and Loma Chio, Loma di Orwada Loma, the Koranski Comini Geshe. On Lama Koran Janal Pape Manores, Janal Pen Mish, Hojurs, Lama de Janal Pe Manor was the end of a minima to go Marsler.
Back in ancient Tibet, a teacher was guiding his students on this topic. And the Lama said to the students at the same illustration that I've just presented. And the students said back to the Lama, well, that's just because you haven't traveled. You've never been to China.
Nanzo Miludi, she never cover Helene. Never Kavi Gimzen Gares. That never Kavi Gimzen that Kawa realized to go Kavi Gimzen Gares, to watch lead one. She's a never Kavi Gimzen Garelane, Milu Drueg, Gudi Druele Calahores.
To understand why something is extraordinarily difficult, as with other Dharma points, one needs to rely on reasons, because through reflecting on reasons, we'll come to understand the topic deeply, transform ourselves. So the reason why it's so extraordinarily difficult to gain a human life is because it's the causes, all the causes that have to be accumulated. These are difficult to accumulate.
Milu Druegi, Gudi Kalehavo in Bugimzen Caresne, the Milunane, Milu na Denjugi Milus or that the Denjugi Milusaja. Says that the Guli Druegi, Gudi Kalehavo in Bugimzen Care Labde, Kazan Milu Hada Mugo, Gugaras, Lunga is in Yaju, the Turum Sungo, Rawa. Says that the Milu Druegi, Druel Kalehavo, Turum Soya de Kalehavo. Jazang Lanzuki, Turum Sung to the Soya de Becale Habocha, Harsane, and Jigger Coralaya and Tikshalia to Chiste. Chizan Luma used to Yeju, don't be Turum Soya de Cale Habores. Chizan Ticale Haboinza, Miluto Gudi, Saya Cale Habores.
The reason, so not only is there a reason why it's difficult to obtain, in other words, the causes are difficult to accumulate, there's further reasoning why the causes themselves are difficult to accumulate. So the causes to attain a fortunate rebirth, as I mentioned yesterday, the primary cause is ethical restraint. This is the primary cause. And to accumulate causes from ethics, especially of the magnitude required, is difficult.
Zada, Zugi, Sosorangi, Donda, Lerina, Karen Suzuki, Donda, Dondala, Shandalia, Junshia, Gohortaya, Chimanguru, the nation, Denegi, and the member that Jiggy, Shangi, Jala, Kuma, Kuyala, Sopata, and Jiggy Luma Yisun Yukone, and the Jiggy, 6 of Share, and Nubakiata, and Lu Yukone, and Shen, Semchen, Sochia, La Sopata, and the Jikuma Kuyala, and some 지 류가 고네마데 셈 나올려 샬런데비 삼바티게다 데니기 도시네 망불리고로와 데네자 난주기 류에 신유제된 수름 소야디칼레 가보래 사실.
We take our own experience and what we observe in the world. We can see when beings motivated by fulfilling their own wishes, whether it's something great or just something minor, the desire to fulfill their own wishes dominates so that ethics is subjugated. Therefore, to fulfill their own wishes with ethics subjugated, people easily take advantage of others, deceive others, verbally or even physically abuse others. So this we have experience of. And this comes about from the desire to fulfill one's own interests, whether great or small. And therefore ethics are relegated and seen as secondary to fulfilling one's own desires.
안디네 장즈 밀리기 소야게 주름 소야디다 제침보인자 다 밀리토야데 갈라하고 임비김 텐디시 다는 아주게 제 밀리지 토베네 데 밀리 딘델야 아지게 지게 류레 나사메바다야 튕게 돈에 강아메바 최준 냠네 제발이야 밀리 토바 잠기야 최 냠네 제라 갈라하고 책으로 제가 디네사 롭션 제라 가른 냠네 제발라 그 류디에네 탕부여바다 내 원보차상 상화다 데네지 튕긴 돈에 강한 매바지 고구라 데네지 고고래시네 제가 아주 미류이데 낭초에 냠는 제발라 수부야고 고르와 내내도 진짜 지제도 말 야 튕긴 야고면 디긴지 제도 말와 나 암좀 원보 마상배나 디긴지네 하고 제도 말 되네자 차상 상화지 고고래 디여발라 디수기 규디 가르서 하고래서네 내 튕긴기 규디래 아니 진배냠는 지야 진바 따야다 아니 되는 안주기 안도시네 쇠배냠는 되게 제고래 세치 숨고래
Attaining a human life, whilst desirable and required, that alone is insufficient for us to be able to have the freedom to practice the Dharma. We can observe this again from our own experience. We know there is such a variety of human experiences in this world, or human circumstances humans find themselves in. Having the wish in future lives to have conditions at least as good as we have now, we need to create those causes to ensure that we are born in a body that is healthy, with sense powers which are functioning well. In other words, we don't have a severe mental impediment or an eyesight or hearing impediment and so forth. So to have good health, good senses, requires the accumulation of specific causes. Also, to have required sufficient material conditions and to live in a peaceful environment, which are indispensable to be able to practice the Dharma, this also requires causes. So therefore, not only is a human rebirth required, but a human rebirth characterized by favorable circumstances is what is required, because that is what's needed in order to be able to practice the Dharma.
제산디네자 상유 점년디기 안지가제 냠는 파진 두스티 송이도 담보 코르네 지메 냠는 제고레 지메 냠는 담보 송바레 가르스네 마저 밀리아 안지기 롱주 튕겐디메나 안가저 밀 지티기디 용토 말에 강아 체기오레 제산 롱주 고고레 디 롱주 용의 규지 조디다 지메 냠는 제고레 사실
Buddha Shakyamuni, recognizing that for humans to be able to practice the Dharma and not be overwhelmed by filling the basic worldly requirements, he encouraged as a practice that of generosity. First and foremost, he encouraged students to engage in acts of generosity, because this is what creates the causes to, in our future lives, to have an abundance of material resources. To the extent one lacks material resources, one is truly impoverished, one's energy, mental and physical energy, will be focused on fulfilling those needs, and one will not have the capacity to engage in the Dharma. When thinking of desired results, and looking at what we observe in the world, we can say in a particular category there's a vast array of results of differing quality. So if we take a conducive environment to practice the Dharma and transform the mind, we look at our world and we see there's a wide array of environments. Some are comfortable, pleasant to be in. Others are really difficult to sustain life. So we see here a variety in results that come and within each category. So we can take, of any category, just take in the environment. If one is born in a particular environment, it's difficult just to maintain life. In others, life is easy and comfortable. So what determines what kind of, in this illustration, environment one is born in, is not merely the cause that was created, but the quality of that cause. If the quality of the cause was poor, was weak, the ripening result will be less desirable. If the quality is excellent, the ripening result will be extremely beneficial.
and then go and what you want to order to load to support in the water that should get in dinner. Bed that you are some bed over you are to give the town and chamber at the naked to do, and then Messiah to your combo the naked can you do up Chirua. Chisadang to Chike Petty to again the Petty together, Chike Churum Songori and Surum Sonyam and Dustia word in Milu Toyadare, and the Hey you said, Hey you said, and I was you tell Hey you there, Hey you Mambo Dewachen said. Dewachen said, Hey, you should tell her, and such a you could get some to get Yahoo, and you get Meadow Dumrata in the best Yahoo you take and mitigate Yahoo in yours and Hey, Dewachen in yours and quite Hey, and you indicate Shigor, what a Sungor, and go what gains a Sungor, what. Dineza, and it teaches home, and take it, music, quite. Yes, she the part, she got she the Lumbachil party watching the Silver as a church. Penichi Lumbalid, that call the bed somewhere, Medodumaya, walk or you get Zangma, Yahoo the Rada. Jesana Yama, legally didn't in the Yore says many Tibetan Alcodu, and Dinashin Chiboredoasm, Leonashin Reshasm, that lady resum gomer, that Leonashin Yahuredo, some Bicoro at dinner some day, and Jecoronga Jema. Penisu Korongi Yelia, Yistan Varesere, and the Yisi part dancing, Titan, and Tamadeli Dilla, and the Kawan dance, Leyune, Leyu Casalumba Kerap to me, and Leyu dinner, Dan Pui says, that Resere, just what a doom you are dinner.
We see in our life that not all results are equal. And the key point then to understand is that is because the causes accumulated are not all equal. So to illustrate this is a story from Sera. It's a Sera monastery in South India. When it was being established for a couple of decades, it really was poor. We lived there and our environment and ourselves, our monastery, was impoverished. Our accommodation was really substandard. We had insufficient food really to sustain ourselves. And our water was of, let's say, varying quality. We got our water from a river a little distance away, and the river water was okay. The problem was that's where we got our water to drink from, to cook from, where we washed our clothes. Perhaps some people upstream would go to the toilet a little close to the riverbank. So the quality of the water ended up being far from ideal. So really Sera back then was very poor. And so at that time, one of the lamas, one of the teachers in Sera, was presenting the God realms, talking about, in particular that of Tashita, talking about the amazing environment there, how everything is clean and abundant, and it was such a contrast to our lived experience. Then a little while later, and one of that lama's students, he went abroad to teach the Dharma, and he was amazed at what a different, how different the countries abroad were. That the environment was clean. There wasn't sewage and waste all over the show. Food was plentiful, and the water too was clean. And he wrote back to his teacher who was the one teaching in Sera, and he said, "I think I've arrived in a God realm. This Tushita can't be any different from this."
Anye barkas. Danye barakale khaboresh. That deni milu thobene jiglawares, jiglawares. Chiza nye barakashin jiglawas. Chiza ngazu milu thobene be jibu meba chalia yen mango shuyores. Chiza jig meba chal be lelawores, jiglawares yore. Benaya Gabriel Naseke Genje Shira, Gabriel Yachik, Koryu with Chulo, Medan, Denigi Moda, Denigi Tone, Mantul Yape, Meba Chaya, Game Mango Shures, Chisan Chiglela or Echere.
Continuing with the first line, extraordinarily difficult to gain and so easily lost. And this is something that we're not really cognizant of, but we can easily recognize, is that this human life that we have is easily lost. There are very few causes to sustain it, but so many things that can happen that can bring our life to an unexpected end. And in fact, as ordinary beings, we are always accompanied by this ever-present danger of the unexpected happening, and our life conditions being radically changed, and perhaps our life even ending.
당한주 밀리디 톱가와레 톱차베네 파지겔야 게임만 모시고를 지라와레스 이나 당한주 밀리디 가르스네 밀리디 미 류덴 텔야 베지 캐주얼 마선나 시우 캐주하고 쉬어레세 캐주 가르스네 미 류덴 텔야 지 가르체베는 주투에게 된 잡아진 요레스 가르 주베네 가르 제베네 제 투에게 누버요레스 제가 미 류덴세 톱가와레스 베 톱차와네 지엘에 발레라오레 이나 미류델야 캐주 가르요라스네 그런 거 톱가와레 지라와레데 이나 미류델야 캐주 디텐델야 가르 주베네 소수 주투에게 누버요 된지레스
This basis, the precious human life, we've looked at 2 points, and there are really 3 here to contemplate well. That it's extraordinarily difficult to gain because of the wide variety of causes that need to be accumulated, and within those causes, there's a wide variety of quality of cause leading to differing results. The second point is, despite there being a requirement for so many causes to achieve a good rebirth, there are very few causes to sustain this life. and so many that can bring about its unexpected demise. Then moreover, to understand why this life is of such great value is because the human life has the specific quality that whatever we focus ourselves on, we can achieve. We have incredible capacity far, far beyond what is ordinarily accepted. But we all within us have this extraordinary capacity coming from this incredible human intelligence.
Anda Lüdin la Karajuna to Tuyare, Lüdin Delet in being under Samotata, Namjedi, Lebigi, Namjedi, Shuj, Namje, Chembushu, Beja, Tantuyaji, Chembushu, Chia.
This extraordinary quality that we have is not our physical bodies. These are quite substandard. Our human intelligence, on the other hand, this is phenomenal.
That was Ningazuki, Tangazuki, Lutin Delia, and a capital power, and then Carriore, Namje Carriore, setting out to do some time in the Tangazuki, Chike, the Dundro Rik Delia, and a Chike, Mambo, Mazuki, Dundru Ludin Digi, Ludigi, Nanzu Lugi, Lega Chebanachin, to go Marwa. Tangazu Ludin Digi, Ludi, Carchi to worse, and Kangba Suare, Jing Namdru Suare, Jing Motra Suare, Kala Suare, and the Chumesel Chutuada, and the Tishing Mebal, Tishing Tapundo Tap Chipakiada, Chaza, Jingazu Lubudi to Gorwa, Ludigi Pejitan to war. And Delia, Lu Dela Tempica, somewhat Masiki, Nyama Garagara Junsha, Mahobana Garagara Yonsare, Dada Garatene Yago Yonsare, Sempica, some Namji Pejidi, Chike, the Digene, Milia, Pando Tuya, Garagara Yonsare, Namjidi, she was just some time to Chigor, Echere, Milia. And she's not to Milia Banashi, Dundola, then the Yoma Echere.
If we compare ourselves as human beings to the wide variety of animal life, we can see that physically, amongst the variety of animals, they have great abilities that we physically do not have. So one can say that animals, some have greater strength, greater speed, they can fly and so forth. So that amongst the animal world, they have many qualities that we physically lack. But the quality that we have that exceeds the entire animal kingdom is intelligence. And it's because of our intelligence we can and do achieve so much. Humans are unique in being able to not only deeply identify problems at a deep level, but both coarse and deep problems we can not just identify, but we can come up with solutions. Solutions also to overcome problems in the short term as well as the long term. No other living being, no other animal can do this. So humans in our intelligence are unique. Look at the homes we live in and all that goes into creating those homes, as well as everything inside. This has come about in dependence on incredible intelligence that is unique to human beings.
Naza Sualia, Naza Meva Sualia, Nazaki, Me Suada, Tijiki, Nazung, Mayong, Maye, Mongo, Men Sua, Naza Supul Lesson, Diva Se, Tabla Me, Men Sua, Anjiki, Haji Naza Supunala, Yuban, Dipa Shashu Tanji, Patsang Sua, Meva Sua, Anjik Tarimbo Padu and Modana, Dile Yasuki Pa Pardushi, Namdolva, Namdrusa, Joya. Chaza, that this Shaza, me, Namjugi, Bejutanji, and Sugore, and Namjugi Bejutawa Nashi, Subana, Lakbigi, that Lugi Bejutanji, Mensuya, that Chala Chazan Sutuorva. Chaza Simjin Dundolia, the name Namju, Namju, Lugi Bejutanji, then the Sutuya Kalakaborva. Chaza Simjin, Shanda, Dundo, Shanda, to Migi Chepena, Tanga to me, Ludin the capital Papa. And then Namjuidi, she would catch him with Jigu. Debata, Mobana, Datawa, Panya, Karingube, Mongochia, Chazan, Chetueg, Namju Peshita, Regile.
Again, comparing ourselves to animals, who knows, perhaps some animals, or maybe all, they can think of solutions to their problems, but they physically incapable of resolving their problems. If the weather's not good, beyond going under a tree, they're not able to do much more than that. Whereas we, on the other hand, we can identify problems, both those which are clearly manifest and those underlying causes. And not only can we identify them, we can think of solutions, short and long-term solutions, solutions that will benefit myself as well as the community at large. And not only do we have this great intelligence, but our hands have some capacity too. And we've created amazing things. If we think of, for example, the advances in medical treatment, from the aspect of diagnosis to the various kinds of treatments and medications that have come about. It's quite phenomenal. Also in terms of travel, all the different forms of travel. And for all of this and other aspects of life, the machinery that is used. And all of this has come about over centuries of development, of gathering of knowledge, finding things out, and seeing how it can be utilized and coming up with new and creative ways to do so. This is unique to human beings, that we can identify problems, come up with solutions, and solutions for the short and long term that have an impact on myself, those that I care for, my community at large, strangers that I have never met or will ever meet. Humans have this capacity.
That's in Yibadi, Gendün Gyatso top du teacher. Just Denigi Den Chaparche, top cover, then on the top de Yores. Just Guya Watchella, then Chudim Suma, then Jevo, that on the Ludin top de Yores. Just not Ludin Denegi on the Lugu Tone and Jig Pechu, down to Yana. Namju to Samlot and Namju Bishu, and the Ludin Dela Denjin, Namju Peshitan, Deniki Cabado party, Nuberchin the Yuding Ludindi, that answer your head or that answer your head, just not the Beshitan Gores, then the Jimmy top to teacher said that answer Yudi or Esti. The she answer get a huge and then you should and the TND, answer Lutin, answer your that answer your the and Dina Namju some of the answer to Yudi, but yes.
Extraordinarily difficult to gain and so easily lost, this basis of precious human life has now been obtained. Having reflected well on the first line, seen that the wide variety of causes that we created in our past lives to have achieved this result right now, and recognized that we were able to do that. And we have now achieved this result of having this body that can achieve through our hands amazing things, but in particular this intelligence, this incredible intelligence that we have obtained. That should give us great courage, great joy, recognizing I can do this because I have done it. I have great potential. There's something far beyond the ordinary that I have achieved and can still achieve.
Dine inzada 저기 semjen dundo야 아니 지게 베네투샤 가서 동화세야나 디기주비 탈람디 데네티네 지역에서는 랍제 잡네 데네 곰 데네스 곰 자월 삼로 데네스 땅고르스 발랍지 잡네 데네 교와 나야데 하고야 갈하고르와 배 하고야 갈하고르 그것은 아직 하고야 베네 데네기 갈하고 차려야지 제가 아주 밀리나 다 데네기 안지 고추 랍제 주니에디 년투고레스 가르가르 셈게 강아세야디 누가 가르가르 세야리아 탑람가르 람간스 공고고레 냠nen가르 지워세야디 먼저 현다게잖아 랍제디 년투고레 년제 암주 고에디 먼저 돈달레 삼땅투고레 삼땅네 라렌타디 베슈땅투고레스 제가 데네게 띠엔다 딘딘에게 캡라전지다 남주딘에 캡라전지 마주를 다디 가주규라 다디 가주 디가는 네디 가주 디요레서라.
Another key advantage that humans have over animals with our intelligence is we don't merely hear sound, we hear language and meaning, which means to overcome our problems, someone with knowledge can share that knowledge and give us advice. And we can reflect on that advice and see if it makes sense in our circumstances and follow it. If one gives advice to animals on how to live a better life, you can talk till you're blue in the face. They will not understand and therefore have no capacity to follow. So in our context, we can hear advice on what the causes are of suffering, the causes are of happiness, and how to eliminate the causes that will lead to suffering and cultivate the causes that will lead to happiness. And then we can learn and reflect, meditate on that knowledge. This is something humans can do. Animals cannot. So the purpose of these first two lines is firstly to understand our situation well, to appreciate our situation, to value our situation, to not take it for granted. And secondly, to give us a great strength of mind, a courage to use this life well.
가래 동아세 디기주에 탑람 가르치네 제투에 뉴버지 유에도 갑라 안 유바자 리딘 유바자 가르치 월선다 되메게 제외 미하와 대제지 출라 변나래서 지난도 donda maybe 안제 자얼파 지고호르제 만족이 바델의 양제 최념을 맞아봐이나 안디마제나 맞아봐는 아주 경험하고 되네자 되미게 자얼파 양제 맞아봐지 안다다라네 제주도 안에 야 아주기 셈게 강하세야다 디기주에게 탑람 최될 파 아니 삼노다 제바치 아니 냠는 제고래서 다 제진이라 변나래 제나 다들 배주체나 약쇼래서
Having come to understand our situation well and developed a strength of mind, we then come to the next part of the verse, which guides us in how to use our intelligence to overcome sufferings, or to express it another way, how to live a life of great meaning. So the verse concludes, do not be distracted by activities of no value. Rather, right now, strive perfectly and single-pointedly in the Dharma. Having reflected well on our situation and come to value it, recognizing it as having great purpose, but be rare and difficult to achieve again. But recognizing that we ourselves created those causes, we not only appreciate what we have, but we have courage, strength of mind. And now, with this, we will turn our mind to the Dharma, wanting to create the required causes for good rebirths and for ongoing spiritual development. To use our intelligence, this incredible intelligence we have, to its fullest capacity. And to do so, we not only need to apply ourselves to the Dharma with focus and commitment, but we need to also ensure that our mind is not distracted to worldly affairs, to things of no lasting value, no real meaning.
SM 지주텔에 양메도 바제 아니 나 철에 제고르시 된다 유행기 자와들 베주시 고르시 오래 나 된다 메베서야 돼다 된다래 내가 될 된다 치중요로 와다 치중요로 와 다른 안쪽이 셈이야 아니 디기 주변에 탑람다 안지 동화세에 탑람디 가서 안쪽 고해야 돼 가서 대화들에 먹어야 돼 동화에 지나디 대양 안에 땡기 대화 게디나 대화네 대화용하다 동화세에 자원에 매버서야디 탑람디 디 아주 고해로와 또다 침보로 와다 디 주변에 탑람디 아주 최념는 제발에 해지야 되려지 나아지 아직 relation 봐서 지게 메도듬라다 되네 참염라시 계속 타 바침여러분에 이제 되나지 여러 와고 되스가 내가 그러냐 지금 relation 차야다 한 셈be 기고 차야다 되네기 지금 여 된다 여르데네 된다 체중 삼다베나 되네기 당한도 두스진데 제베나 된다디 디충아레스 곧 되었지마도 안에 요 말에서 님이 지금 대대비를 되스 가기 대랑 좀 말들이 제가 제일 약간 내용으로 와지래 지산디 된다 충아레스 다 아주기 최념는 삼노당 고 직퇴베제 퇴베되는 삼당 곰 되는 제베이나 아니 디기 첨부 주야다 안 동화데 빠에 첨부 세 투야게 네 게디나 대화요하다 게디나 동화 묘하데 된다데 첨부래 세상 니 된다데 된다 체신 삼다제 된다 중화데 파샤 체에데 두고 그래 해서 그러다 된다 디스고 되매 자월 미야와 다제지 쉐라 베나레 아세 최 주야데 된다 체유래 해서
Do not be distracted by activities of no meaning, of no value. Here, we need to, as always, use our intelligence. Because when something is said to have no value, we should understand that what has value can be understood on a gradient. Most things one can point to and say, there is some value to engaging in this, to thinking about this. But there is a gradient in terms of value. Some things have lesser value, some things have greater value. This we need to then determine. And the way to determine whether something's value is great or lesser is to think of our underlying desire for lasting happiness. A happiness that is completely freed from pain and suffering. And this is the happiness of liberation. To the extent we put energy into the Dharma, things of great value, we will be accumulating the causes that will bring greater happiness, and in particular, bring closer the attainment of lasting, stable happiness. To the extent that we put energy into things of lesser value, to that extent, our mind will stay distracted to such things of lesser value, and the attainment or the accumulation of the causes that will lead to lasting happiness will not come about. So, for example, it's important to relax and spend time with our friends, to rejuvenate, maybe go to somewhere beautiful like a park or the mountains or the beach. We need to do these things as ordinary people. But we need to use our intelligence and understand that perhaps right now I need this, but the benefit I receive from this is not lasting. I must not overemphasize the value. There is some value, but I must see it in its real perspective. The pleasure I'm experiencing here, this is wonderful, we need pleasure, but don't be overwhelmed by it. Don't grasp at it thinking this is the sum of what I can achieve, this is what I should be striving for. Experience it, enjoy it, and let it go. See these ordinary pleasures for what they are, and ordinary events for what they are. So there's a wide variety of things, of very limited value, that as ordinary people, we get caught up in. We need to see this in its true perspective. Because as we do, we will conversely value the Dharma ever more, because you'll recognize that through engaging in the Dharma, cultivating knowledge and meditating on that, we create the causes for lasting happiness. That is truly what we want. All the worldly affairs, these ordinary events that generally in society are seen are so important, we'll see in their true perspective. And with greater ease, we'll strive perfectly and single-pointedly in the Dharma. We'll be much more focused in the Dharma because we'll see that in its true value.
Chue nyamlen jelati patsu tuya dan tubi dundala samda di chegore madon ani de chege ada lo chema di wa chigin lo nisum jela chigin sen odanga de lega chue lega je sa son de ba chig chigin sa da undu shebene lega de gedina chaya so mares anji me wanza da lo chema chigin sido logic paradelia andu sene pa chiya yang je sha bene lo chema jego ko prada mara denyo mares 제가 되네서 다다 수부 대다 여바다 튕게 차와다 대다 진이 유디 갑려야 남사 한 냠내는 고수 오래 해서 그래.
in this verse, there are many key points to reflect on. So I mentioned those that were brought out in the first two lines. Here, in the second two lines, we need to really look at all aspects of our life in terms of what are we physically engaging in, what are we talking about with others, and what dominates our thoughts, our mental process. And ask ourselves with honesty, with clarity, do I really need to engage in these? Is there lasting value that comes from this? And there are many things that we do need to engage in. We need to ensure that we have a home with food, and therefore we need to earn a salary. So we do need to engage in a variety of activities. But we need to see them in their true perspective. Because to the extent we do not, we'll be overwhelmed by activities, thoughts, conversations about things of no lasting value. And accompanying this then, we'll have an intellectual understanding of the benefits of engaging in the Dharma, and we will readily say how important it is. But that will be followed by, but not now. Right now my life is too busy. I have this to do, that to do. And these things all have value. But are we seeing their value in their truer perspective? So in the fourth line, we have the expression, right now. So right now we understand in two ways. There are needs that we need to take care of, and we can take care of them right now, but then let them go. Don't let them dominate our minds beyond the immediate. Moreover, the second meaning is that we need to engage in the Dharma right now. We must not procrastinate. We must not allow ourselves to be deceived by our own misunderstandings, our own mistakes in what we value, believing that I have time. Next month, next year, I will be able to do so. This is a self-delusion. We need to recognize it and guard against it.
다데네 제고의 김제가선 되지 직당보들 직라와래라 소하데 직라와 제산 직라와래 제산 긴 아주 지역이 긴 강한 태에 긴 망고요래스 제산 되네기 긴지 최선으로 제마지긴 센데 디발라들로 긴 직두자 최선번에 니고 버리기 말와스 제산 다데네 직제고래 해야돼 김제로스 디시고래
What's been expressed here at the end of the verse ties in with the beginning too. So we have here that this precious life we have achieved is so easily lost. That is because there are so many causes that lead to unwanted circumstances. And we know this from our life, how readily pain and misery comes into our life. Suffering of varying magnitudes, whether it's a slight discomfort or deep emotional pain. And these come about readily, with ease. Those causes or circumstances we meet, and the causes within ripen. So when we understand this easily lost well, we see that it refers to both this life, as well as the varying opportunities in this life. And those opportunities we can understand as an expanse of time, or this opportunity right now, this session.
Da la tsiki da ningbo sur du den shavana da nga zugel lu nga zu mi lu tian xie de be chi top ga wa re ga sene ju ya po sa wa den top wo re je san top ga wa de da nga zu lu tian de top de res je san lu tian mi lu tian de top de mi lu tian de gi de ne be be xue xu dang tu ye yue de gen da mi lu tian de le sam la xu dang ya yue de gen chi cha go res je san da zu ge mi xian da zhen de lab cha la ka nian be ne nian yue de ba da da de la sam la dang yue de gen Denigi Bishu Tang Yudikin, Tang Anzuki, that the Lutin top to Yore. Denigi Tobi Dudelia, and Dunda Chunjun Lia, Dunda Chunjulia, 고거데 된다 첨부도 파르교 말에 제가 된다 첨부 먼저 동화 띵이 동화세다 띵이 디기 주의기 안에 마 안에 저기 상유 좀된 마 손제비기 삼록이 당당기 공라 냠len제데 안 최대 냠len제고래 다되는 제고래 마도 안 제마서 좀 발라로 그래서 다되는 제도네 안 제고래 사실 너나 디송고래.
In this verse, there are many key points. Through reflecting again and again what is presented here, we'll come to recognize and appreciate what we have achieved, the causes that we've accumulated, and the result that we now experience of having this human life. Moreover, recognize that such a life is difficult to obtain because the causes are so difficult to cultivate. Reflecting on this well, using the examples that I've given, as well as many others, one will really appreciate what we have, value what we have, and thereby we won't take it for granted, won't let it go to waste, but will rather use it well. Ensure that whatever remains of this particular opportunity, whether we looking at it both from a short perspective as well as from the perspective of this life, use what remains well, guard our minds. Take the teachings you receive here and in the previous and coming sessions and reflect on them. In the meditation session, keep them in mind between sessions. And by doing so, deepening the integration, this serves to lead us to challenge what we value, what we see as important, what we see as worthwhile. And as we change our values in this way, seeing things as they really are, seeing things in their truer perspective, we are able to focus on what has meaning. And as we live an ever more meaningful life, we will experience the results of that. Our mind will become much less caught up in worldly events, of things that are said to us, things that are done. You'll see them too in their true light, and will not grasp at them and overemphasize their importance. Our mind will thereby become much wider, more expansive, more relaxed and spacious. But results like that come from looking at our life with clarity and seeing what really has meaning and what does not.
델리아 잡수 이체비 토네 안디수냠는 제바들을 최냠는 제바 아주 최냠는 제바라 거래. 나 에다 공안도 인지미지 최 건조지 잡수 도제 냠는 마체베네 마조베네 류가 예수 예주 도면디 최 케멜레나 디 제어지나 디고 제추고 거래. 아니 지 잠바다 제와 제디 아니 지 권초제 케멜레베네 그 최기지 요마르도 고잠바다 제와도 수이나 비지 냠는 제슈고 제가 디네자 최케멜랭엘에 아니 그 잠바다 랑기 부다 아니 분자다 안제솔 심질레 제와다 잠바죠 요로와다 오늘 제 잠바다 제위 냠는 제디 그 아주 미나리아 출로 가르치나 요디게 최케멜랭바나 요디게 심진 두로에네 호소리 지기지리야 잠바제다 호소 제와제디 용고로와 지다 제고를 냠는 제고를 지시해와 다 최 냠는 세디 권조지를 접수 조유 토네 디스 냠는 제바들을 최 냠는 제바라고 해제래 다 권조지를 접수 마도바네 권조지 케멜렌바이나 디스 류아니주를 추림 소야다 잠바다 제와 냠는 제는 디고레스 디 인지미주 최기 시험아 잠바다 제와 냠는 제 인지미주 최바인 최지 겹조지 가서 권조지 켈링과 가서요 말했어요.
Part of what I've presented thus far is talking about coming to recognize what we desire, which is lasting happiness, and that this comes about in dependence on the accumulating the specific causes such as ethical restraint, generosity, love, compassion, and so forth. And to cultivate those causes, one requires knowledge, and then to meditate, to reflect on that knowledge, so as to transform one's mind. Because accumulation of causes comes about through mental transformation. And where does one receive the knowledge? Where does one have the example of the results of meditating on that knowledge? That is the three jewels. Going for refuge to the three jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And it's going for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha that will make the training in love and compassion and generosity and ethics and so forth a religious practice, in particular a Buddhist practice. But a key point to make here is that in order to engage in the teachings and cultivate them within oneself, one does not need to be a Buddhist, one does not need to be religious. One can be of any religion or no religion. It is not essential to be a Buddhist it's not essential to be a Buddhist, it's not essential to go for refuge to the three jewels. One can still receive the teachings, and through one's own predisposition, whether it's a different religion or none, hear those teachings, reflect on them to see if they make sense or not, and where they do, apply them through meditation.
여름식이 순고래 나가서 낭비기 죄 나라 송에 될 낭비 죄다 낭비 천직사 낭비 따릅셔야지 제가 대선 숨치되 다 낭비 죄 라면도 야 권조 케일린 잡수 낭비 아니 제 뜀발이야 안 잡수 조유 돈에 냠내 제 줘야 돼 낭비 죄스 그래서 낭비 따릅셔야당 낭비기 천직니보디 인지미지 권조라 잡수 마저한지다 출루 수인에 아니 라렌타나 소소라 판도여지레스 제가 낭비 따릅셔야다 낭비 천직셔야 니데 샘감리바 디서 아니 지기 최 케일린다면은 최대 출루 수인에 배셔다나 인지미지 낭비기 권조래 잠조셔고 잡수 조제 잡 케일린제 제거야 말돼서 수이 냠는 제배는 따릅당 아니 지 천직디기 롭죠 제배는 소소리야 판도여 버지레 된자 수시나 냠는지는 지고를 숨어래. 지산 잡수조 권조를 낭비가 권조를 잡수조에 토네 다 냠는 제배네 다 낭비 취해서 냠는 제바서 올라 다 낭비 취 말라나 다 낭비 권조를 잡수 마저베네 낭비 따르기 토네 따르 삼다 제바체다 아니 낭비 천릭도 좀 제배네 차상래 판도여 버지 인지미지 낭비 권조를 야 취 땜발이야 잡도 제고요 말해서 그래.
The point I've just made is something that His Holiness makes again and again. That the religious component of Buddhism, such as refuge, this is something really only suitable for those who identify as Buddhists. But all the other components of Buddhism, the science and philosophy, this is something that is accessible and of great benefit to anyone. There is no requirement to be a Buddhist to take benefit from the philosophy and the integration of that through meditation.
지난 데니기 상주기 아니 낭베 셈기 아니 제 낭베 죄는마 셰셰베 송나를 바 상이 좀 내는 송셰베 나려야 안 셈기 아니 삼로 따다나 낭베 따줍기 거제바 제다 데니기 아니 지게 삼로 따다게 돈에 냠는 디게다 이제 죄 마제베 죄 낭베 뜀바 케밀레베 나데서 냠는 제나 지고래 해야지 온도 지고래 데니자 데니기 지게 낭비의 상주기 되니게 직대도 빛인 대사 랍라카나라 망불고래 지ben에 야가르스 랍라로다 되니게 아니 지기 토름 랍라디와야 직대신 되니직 되니게 랍고르 수도하네 럽잖아.
Emphasizing this point that one does not need to experience or see the world as a Buddhist, to be able to understand Buddhist philosophy and views, and to be able to apply it to oneself. Buddhism is taught at universities throughout the world to an audience who are not necessarily Buddhists, and they can achieve great benefit from it. Likewise, in schools in India, Buddhist philosophy is also taught, although the pupils are largely not Buddhist. I've seen discussions from schools in Delhi where they have classes on the Buddhist science of the mind, and then the students engage in brief meditation on the topics, and they report that for them, they really experience benefit from this knowledge and meditating on it.
직 통네 되네 아니야 제 강아 태야 지금 그래 야 미 통제네 야지 대화 영화지 그래 제산디 고직디래 다야 암전에 고아제 자지 고아제네 니 담민년 받고는 아주 셈냐 강아 태야다 야지 전년부로 주고는 야 스스로랑 야 가라나지야지 대 암조 직제 진도고로 지메로 지메 약고지 주나 카나 아니야 스스로래 그 셈냐 가라나지야다 지메 두자가나 셈을 막아지야 안디나신 젤레네 도로지 좋아 야보르시오나 안 소소기 가나라디 배신부도서 가나라게다 로 야보메징이 어디디 배지 누구도 지지세데 나디 두고 직제 셈미겨 근데 략자 류리 략자에베네 안지기 류리야 레요도 안지기 략자데 야보지 좀바다 가나라자 야보지 뭐죠나 안디지 직 마가와기야 제가 데네기 다 대직 셈나로야 삼로로지 삼로지 지금 마디고 따면은 그 셈나 강아티야 근데 셈지 야고라지 삼다네 야소소에 가라나요 진짜 되니 인상은 주기 용해기 강아 용서에 니레 동아 용서에 되는 용고래 제상한 주기 디단에 제상 와가서 옹보 고담바 세딩한 줄이야 나베 랍제 옹보 고담바 옹보 고담에서 고 잡샤바서 강변으로 고디 잡샤나 하와요서야 먹고 뭐지 지금 요서야 먹고 잡샤 진나신 미다 암조다 지기 강아 용하게 초들 봐 삼마다제 봐 마다제 그 디기 요서에 초들에 배시 당고 그래서지 숨을 시선 디네 자당 한 저기 낭비기 최기 나네 랍제 조데 가르던 것은 디기 용하게다 동화세데 조 셈리아 셈리아 소교단 거 셈들이야 동화에 유조의 셈을 때는 용거래 디기야 조 셈을 때는 누구 진짜 셈의 소교단 거래 셈 소교단에 가서는 셈 엠비직다 라신이가를 뇌비기 직셈데 파매봐서 깨맞죠 깨차와되게 파매봐서야다 마게바는 깨야려 깨맞죠지 셈 상부직 잠바단 제와단 팬비 삼로되게 안직 삼로되게 직 마게바되게 수깨 깨게 탑시제 깨차교에는 곰체 야 공부해야지 다 탑람 또 니띵 거라는 거죠 셈레에 속였다 쓴 거래
We all have 6 doorways through which we experience the world. We have those doorways are our 5 physical senses of the eyes, the ears, nose, taste, touch and smell. And the 6th is our mind. So it's through these doorways that we experience the world, and we experience the world as either pleasant or unpleasant. So this we readily know is true. If we see something beautiful, our mind becomes joyous. If we see something awful happening, our mind becomes one of suffering. Likewise with speech. If we hear something pleasant, something that stirs the mind, our mind becomes joyous. If we hear something harsh, an awful sound, or really disagreeable speech, our mind itself seems to be harmed. So same of course with smell and taste and objects of touch. So the advice here is very clear. We must close these doors. And the meaning is, the advice is we must close the doors, just like to our home, we close these doors. The meaning is, more intuitively, is that we must take care of the doors, take care of what comes to our mind. Regard what our senses encounter and recognize if something is bringing pain and unhappiness, we should not encounter this anymore. We should, as far as we can, move away from it. But in all instances, whether we are experiencing the world through our physical senses or solely through our mental sense, for example, recalling something from the past or thinking about something in the future, all instances, we must take care of our mind. Our mind and its health is our responsibility. The way to do this is to be mindful in all circumstances of our inner workings, of what is going on within us. And when we recognize that unwholesome minds have arisen, are arising, or may arise, we need to counteract those immediately. And we do so through mindfulness and through understanding the danger that unwholesome minds or the afflictions pose. And we do this through recognizing the great benefit of wholesome minds, of virtuous minds, and consciously generating them again and again. So this is what you do in your meditation sessions. You generate wholesome minds, virtuous minds, and strengthen your habituation or your familiarity to them, remembering that those words are synonyms for meditation. Then out of meditation, you try and keep those minds present. And then as life appears to one through one's physical senses or through thought, keep those wholesome minds present. And when unwholesome minds, afflictions arise, eradicate them immediately. This is essential. This is training the mind. This is practicing the Dharma.
dorduchima samda karitang goresinda gajele donda dire danga ju lüden setbe danga ju tin chabachan de tin telya de ji keju shebana lüden telya an지 가르줍네 에서 samda beje chim보슈 주에 등에 지래 다당아 lüden de yores 제 lüden de 예비 ringlia 다데능이 안지게 네 계셔 냠는 제야디게 아니 냠는 지인 마도 뭐바나 직 제마 제와서나 하죠지 아니 직 제야 고라 말한데 요 말. 다디이 냠는 지기야 선배게. 된 캬바지나 짜침무 런 류디 짜침무 임바데 소소가 하고 바체 지사데 니디 베주디 야보 땅마도는 앞에 로판보래 지사 베주디 야보 땅이 선배게. 다 베주 땅나 가르치에서나 가상한 주체디 링아 이숨요거네 땅에 샬리야 네바 삼나데 자자고기 지메 선배게 삼로 다 도치네 다가 삼단하디 도치네 삼다 가상다 디리니 니게 좀 쉬셔봐나 링아 이숨요거네 샬라 네바 자고기 지메야 선배게 지사 데니게 삼다디게 삼다디 땅안 저기 다다디 띠나신 마오번에 띠 개발전 토비하기 규차고 그래 지사 데니에서 규 아니 유단 찐라 떼네 안 죽고 해서 디마사바네 규사고 데 규디 사고 제산 마호바나 데릭스마다 데릭지고 제산디 야고 주여바네데 마호바나 가서 띠 야고 기토야 차고 데네서 디 니르딘다데 녀마 규디네 사발라 떼네 녀마 가서 디 떼인지 규디네 사발라 제상이데 규사발라 데네 떼인 하고 톱샤 마호바네 떼디 디나시 야고 용해야 된다래야 이 규디 야고 도시네 사기 지긴 선배 삼다샤가 나다가서 나님보다 지차가 떨어지지.
To summarize what we've looked at thus far, with the emphasis on what we've looked at this morning, is this meditation is one of really great importance to reflect on this life that we have achieved, and to recognize its incomparable potential, that independence on this human life, marked with the various qualities that it is, we can achieve complete freedom from pain and misery. However, this life is was incredibly difficult to obtain. And we come to recognize this through seeing the variety of causes required, as well as how few people have a life like ours, or how few beings have a life as good as ours in terms of being able to accomplish the Dharma. Then thirdly, despite its great value, it's easily lost. It's easily lost. Here we reflect on the many causes that can come by at any moment that can bring this opportunity to an end or this life to an end. Reflecting on these 3 points then leads us to appreciate what we've achieved, value what we've achieved, and to commit to use it well. Then to commit to use it well, that means to look at what takes up our time in terms of our physical engagement, what we speak about, and our mental activity. Where are we putting our energy? And then question, does this have lasting value? Does it truly have lasting value beyond this life as well? And in terms of the benefit it can come to others. We see this in the light of through comparing it to the Dharma, recognizing that through cultivating the minds of the Dharma, incredible benefit will come to us right now in this life, as well as through our development, our way of interacting with others changes, and thereby we bring benefit to others. And moreover, these causes we create, they will lead to ever better future lives and our rapid approaching of liberation and enlightenment. So comparing what takes up in particular our mental energy to the Dharma, we can start to reprioritize our life. And in this way, with greater ease, we live a life of meaning. And to attain the results we desire, we recognize, this ties back to yesterday, that everything that we desire and everything that we desire to have and desire to be freed of comes about in dependence on causes. So we need to identify those causes that lead to happiness and lead to suffering, and by being mindful of ourselves, of our own mental process, ensure we keep our mind on the side of virtue and don't allow it to come under the influence of the afflictions. And in this way, we gather knowledge, we apply that knowledge, and we prepare well. We prepare well for living what remains of this life meaningfully. We prepare well to die with ease and without fear. We prepare well to ensure that all our future lives go well. And this is taking the same way of thinking that we apply to our everyday life. We analyze and we think, what do I want? How do I achieve it? In this way, we know if we plan well, our projects will work out well. So too, do we need to look at what is actually of greatest meaning and prepare adequately. And the better we prepare, the greater quality the causes we accumulate, the more remarkable the result will be. So thank you. We can conclude there then for this morning. If you have some questions, then feel free to ask. Sure.
I just want to know, yesterday we talked about how we see external thing as mere appearance, right? So how do you relate? So we sort of experience compassion. So that's also some. So we see people suffering, right? So we cultivate compassion. But we see people suffering, that's an appearance of suffering. How do we gel them, together in terms of our experience of compassion? Is it an appearance of that feeling, and the external being that we see we believe is suffering, is appearing to be suffering? Then how do we sort of move forward to make sure that we actually help, or do we sort of say, is it real? It's sort of trying not to bring in the element of, sometimes we tend to be, I want to help you. It's as though you are sort of feeding into your own so-called self-cherishing attitude thing. So how do we sort of strike a balance in that? And the second question is, Geshe Lama was talking about good quality course and the quality of courses which are weak. So when we say good quality and weak quality courses, how do we sort of demarcate that one also? So, thank you.
Fabulous questions. So the second one first, how do we differentiate the quality of a cause? What makes a cause of better quality or lesser quality? Then the first question is understanding that whatever appears to mind doesn't exist in the way that it appears, so therefore it can be likened to an illusion. So if we observe suffering and compassion arises within us, that compassion that arises within us, this it can be likened to an illusion. The person that we're observing can be likened to illusion, as can the suffering that they are experiencing, right? So so if that is the case, how do we engage without the self-cherishing mind?
Yeah, so okay. Not to sort of, just... so sometimes when we are not mindful, we just say, I want to help that person. Like, do we question whether we are actually feeding into our self-cherishing mind?
Okay. So then how do we engage without, help others without doing so under the influence of the self-cherishing mind? Okay.
당고데 지난데 저기 누가야 다 가리나 최선 유마다고 레시로와 유마다고 세디 가르스르스네 베니 유마 든디 갈라시 베니 자로식 되니기 랑직 된바이나 나야리아 직 셈젠로 있는 거데 돈다 오마나 셈제레요 말와 베니 지간에 안에 신로다 안에 직직 유르마도 된 거말라 디레요 말와 유마세 디시그로와 지산 디나시 아주 둥아디게수 둥아이나 아주 나야도 둥아디 요르데 이내 아주 둥아 셈을 차도 가르쳐 차고서는 둥아디 강라에 마도봐 코랑은 원이 두버되어 있는 거래스 지산 강라에 마도 랑원이 두버 나와 나신지 강라에 마도봐지 두버되어서는 디 말레스 둥아야도 규단 끼를 때는 두고마도 규단 끼인지 매나 둥아야 말레스 지산 둥아 나와 나신 강라에 마도봐 랑은 원이 두버되어 둥아지요 말레스 둥아디 제 규단 끼 샬을 때는 두고래스 지산 디 디르와 다 랑치지 메나시도 랑치진 세디 나다 근데 셴지지로 근데 랑치진 세디 가서 소소랑기 삼마도 셴달라 랑치진 세디시 월다 소소랑 녜레 소소랑 디기 두고도 선배게 삼로디 랑 소소 빼야고라 삼 당보 제바 책으로 봐. 다 랑치지 메나 다 랑도 봐. 셴다 랑당 셴 차상 디기 되바도 누워미도 지번 셴 차상의 디기 고리에 선배 삼로 줘번 셴지선세. 디기 셴레 판도 두고 와. 아도 셴지선에 삼로 돈 두고 와. So
just before I answer, first to say, if anyone needs to go, by all means do. So now, just to answer the first question, right? So everything, like you said, that appears to consciousness, it does not exist in the way that it appears. It appears as being it appears as if it is independent, not requiring causes or parts of imputation. This is how things appear. To express that differently, it appears to be independent because it exists by way of its own essence, nature, or characteristics. So this is how everything appears to us, whether in your illustration it was the sentient being, their suffering, or my compassion. Everything that appears to mind appears in this way. The way it exists, though, is opposite to that. Not independent, but dependent on, for example, causes. So this is just really repeating back to you what you said, right? The answer will come. And so the being before one, let's say it's a bird that's suffering, right? This bird has come about in dependence on causes. There's not something about this bird that makes it a bird, despite it appearing to be truly a bird. Likewise, its suffering has come about in dependence on causes, and therefore can be eradicated. Our compassion that has now arisen has come about in dependence on causes, and therefore can be strengthened. So that's repeating what you've said. And the purpose of all this is it gives us a strength of mind that something can be done, and we can do something. Now, how to do so without, and I'll use a different translation of self-cherishing, which is more literal and I think clearer, grasping at oneself as dear. So grasping at oneself as dear, this shows that I want happiness. This is the self-cherishing mind. You're grasping at yourself as dear. This equates with I want happiness. So how to engage then without this is through the deep reflection prior that there really is no difference between myself and other. It's not that we are one being, but we are no different in wanting happiness. We are no different in desiring freedom from suffering. So I'm helping someone who on a fundamental level is no different from me. And when that understanding is deep within one, we help without grasping at oneself as dear. This is not about my recognition, my reputation, my merit. This is truly help one person helping another, without any feeling of differentiation, the helper and the helped and so forth.
Okay. gyubche yakbodu mindu sayade yakdu ge khebar kare chigire sayachi chigir wada achesa gyudi yakdu kare kan chile yakdu shagire sigirwa tadi yakdu shayden jidang jugi jidin yongra le ge sheda shigorwa yakdi yakbodu yakmare sayachi da yakdu shebe ne benerwa bene che ningba che chola jugyorchi che chola jugyoda denegi rigmangwoji domje kala shebe na odi kala di 아니 규지 칼라디 규지도 야고 말해서 그래서 철학을 교장하게 해서 다체디게 지금 서버다 아니 지금 수불이야 지금 판도 유디겐 아니 체디게 체디게 규지 계속 칼라 서버는 디 칼라디 규지 야고 그래 그래서 체디게 서버다 수불을 만회야 판도 유디겐 이렇게 다체 닝바 철학적교 아니 지게 요번에 디 닝바다 철학적교 수불 누구로 와 디 칼라 속에도 칼라디 디 칼라의 규디 다야고야 말을 그래서네 칼라디 체리 철학적교를 수불 누가서 누구를 했어야지 지나다 칼라를 마선에 칼라 쇠식이 니디 체 서버 수불 팬도 유디게 칼라 쇠식이 칼라디 그 칼라디 규디 야고야 봐지 다디 칼라 체 닝바 루교 철학적교디 쇠식 규디게 칼라디 다 두시네 다 칼라산 수불 누구로 제자디 칼라디기 규주고라 야고와 막아서 규주디 철학적교디 디서교래 해야지 배선로지 되는 샤그로 와
So I'll answer it through taking just a worldly illustration, and from that then you can apply it to the Dharma situations. So we accumulate causes because we want a specific result. So when you go home next week and you're cooking a meal, you will have an idea of a particular result, that meal that you want to enjoy, and therefore you will accumulate the causes, namely those ingredients and the particular cooking method. So this is how we live our life, and it's the same with the Dharma. Now if you select causes that will not lead to that desired result, those causes are still causes, but they are of poor quality. So, for example, your ingredients are of poor quality, or they, if they are of poor quality, perhaps the meal won't taste so well. Or if you choose to include causes, ingredients, that are not healthy, whilst the meal may be tasty, the underlying hope that we have, that this meal will not only be tasty but sustain the body, that won't be fulfilled. So the causes are not of great quality. Another way to look at this is those causes that we are accumulating. Will those causes be exhausted in this life? Will the desired result come and be completely experienced and exhausted in this one life? That too is of low quality. But I'm aware that lunch is getting cold, and that is an unwanted cause. But I will have more to say on your question, specifically at the Dharma this afternoon. So thank you very much.